There we go.
Exactly. So you were saying earlier shows?
I was saying earlier episodes, earlier conversations, there was more participation with folks who were attending, and pluses and minuses, but that has value as well. So you were saying that maybe you'll have some just time slots, and anybody that shows up will participate in the conversation. And I think that's a good opportunity as well, different than what you're doing now. But the shows that you're doing now, the episodes, the conversations, these, sort of supposed to be 1 hour, I think.
Yes, this one, Symposium.
Yes, Symposium.
But
there's just some really great content. So hopefully people are going back to your YouTube channel and picking up. I've got a list I've been working through, trying to listen to some people I haven't heard before on your. Not that some of the people I've heard aren't fantastic, but just again trying to expand, which is part of the point. So listening to some folks I haven't listened to, I've really been enjoying that. So.
No, the one with Rosalia that you were saying you were listening to, that went on for quite some time because there was no slot, no one after that, because she was available only on Sunday. And I was telling her, the idea is to get wonderful people talking about their whatever their thoughts on this subject is, rather than make it that kind of impersonal thing. Okay, this is a slot, you have time, come in, or if you don't have time. Like today, we're doing this on Tuesday. This whole thing was supposed to be only Wednesdays and Thursdays. But we have to get Teresa in, so whatever it takes. So that's how it is.
And we have an hour today, both of us. So we're gonna be right on time. We both have a hard stop.
With me, like I said, for me, it can go on as long. But yes, we will respect your 1 hour.
Yeah, I thought you had someone after me today. So
not today. This is especially for you. This was.
Well, I have someone after you. So.
Oh, okay. So Teresa, thank you very much for coming in. And of course, for the other shows that you've come in, let's call them shows. I like calling them shows. So, and of course, that was very interesting. That the one that we had that discussion with on the creativity part of it. So that was good. So thank you very much. And of course, on Heart, Soul, Spirituality, and Mediation, you're going to take it from here. I'll come in only when you want me to come in. Please.
Okay.
And of course, you have to tell us about yourself, a lot about yourself, background, growing up, value system, all that also.
Well, I'm going to keep that short because we did that on Saturday. And, part of me says, I can't imagine anybody listening to the entire 2 hours, but maybe the front part. So we worked through some of that. So I'll just hit the highlights if that's okay. So we can get into the heart, soul, and spirituality, which we tried to save, right? Diverted some of that so that we would be able to talk about that today as part of the symposium. So I am in Florida, was born in Ohio, but been in Florida almost my entire life. Love it here because of some of my connection to the outdoors, which we'll talk about maybe a little bit today in the spirituality component. But so I'm here in Florida, a place that I love and feel I'm very appreciative of being able to live where I live and enjoy the life that I enjoy. By training, I am a psychologist and have spent much of my career, though, working alongside various court systems, criminal dependency and family court. And over time, have totally focused my career on services for clients who are involved in some sort of family conflict. And so at this point, I primarily do mediation, collaborative divorce process as a collaborative neutral, and then in less formal services, helping parents develop their transition through their divorce process and what how the family is going to function after that transition, and how to make their children the positive focus of life after they're no longer together as a couple. So that's a sort of a quick review of where I am professionally. And that's probably enough for today, right? So
I don't know. I still feel that we need to know lots more because of the fact that where you're coming from in relation to heart, soul, spirituality. That maybe you can take it as it comes also, whatever.
Yes, I think that's going to come out as we talk about heart, soul, and spirituality, at least from my perspective. And I know you've been putting some, trying to put that in further into some categories related to the mediator, the participants, the process. So we'll I think some of that's going to come out as
Interesting
we
thing,
go along.
Teresa, what happened was after talking to Rosalia, I of course had
Added
said,
one.
yeah, exactly, the dispute,
Yes.
the dispute
Yes, you
also.
added that. Yes.
Yeah, so I need to put that out also, because that's also
Yes.
interesting. That part of it I did not put out, but I think that's really interesting. The dispute itself and where all these elements come in.
That's correct. So I agree with that. So for me, when I'm going to start with heart and work to spirituality, because that's just sort of how my brain thinks. And when I think about heart, for the basic part of that is that's the sort of the center of our physical being. And, you know, when our heart stops, that physical being, the way that we interact in the earth, the way that we do now is, you know, that part ceases. And depending on what maybe your beliefs are, what happens to the soul after, but certainly the physical being doesn't go on without that heart. And as people, we've sort of symbolically associated heart with the center of emotion, affection, you know, love, compassion, and I'm not one for quoting people because I don't always remember the, you know, exact quote, but I think Helen Keller has been attributed as saying something along the lines of, you know, the most beautiful things in the world can't be seen or even touched. They have to be felt with the heart. So we associate as humans, at least in the culture in which I was raised, you know, the heart with also not just the center of physical life, but sort of the center of emotion and love and compassion. The soul, to me, is the essence of who you are as a human being. And it is that which makes you unique. There is no other soul that is like yours or like mine. And how I see it, never has been, never will be. It is the uniqueness of you. And then to me, I wrap a lot into the soul, a list that would be so long. I'm sure I'll forget some component, but you know, it's your conscious self, it's your character, it's your cognition, it's your perception, it's your memory, it's your collection of life experiences, it's how you make meaning of the world, how you make meaning of yourself. And I think that's where the struggle is as a human. Whichever struggle we want to list, right? Self versus other, good versus evil, that ideal self of who we would like to be or think we would like to be, and yet the daily struggle, at least for me, to achieve that. That's where all of that struggle occurs. I believe we all have a soul. It's just that the struggle within that soul for some people perhaps is more difficult than others on certain constructs. Some people aren't struggling within their soul, apparently, to be kind and compassionate and human and respectful of others and consider every human being to have value, to accept them, to cooperate, you know, to discourage exploitation and injustice and inequality. So everybody's struggle within their soul is different. And I think that spirituality is that connection piece. It is that connection to, certainly to ourselves, but I think more importantly, it's connection to outside of ourselves. It's connection to a single person, a group of people, a community, a connection to everyone, to the entire world. And there's also this piece that says, is it connection to some entity outside of ourselves? Is it connection to the physical world, to nature? I think that it is as well. And within that concept of spirituality is this organized religion concept, where for some people, how they live out their connection to something greater than themselves or outside themselves is through the structure of a religious construct or religious practices, or borrowing from a lot of religious constructs. So there's a connection there for me, and I understand there isn't that connection necessarily for everyone. That doesn't mean that someone doesn't have spirituality because they're not connected into that religious piece, because I think spirituality really is about that connection piece. And I was trying to, Victor, Baba, is it Baba?
Victor
Or is it
Baba, yeah, Victor Baba.
shared that Zulu word with us, which I know I'll butcher. Ubuntu, I guess.
Ubuntu,
You are because of me and I am because of you. And I think it goes further with a longer phrase that I'm not going to be able to repeat. You may be able to. But that's one of the things I'm enjoying about listening. These little nuggets that I take, that I might have been making a list of had I known you were going to do this thing on Friday, but I didn't know until a few days ago. So I don't have my list, but there's a few that come to mind. And so, wherever you have received your view of spirituality, I think for many, many, many people across cultures around the world, there is some core piece related to connectedness. And so that is the place also where I think we really can help our souls grow in a positive way. Because if we're just looking within ourselves and working within ourselves to achieve things that serve ourselves, we're going to miss those vital components that make the world a better, more livable place, not just for me, but for everyone else. We have to know and understand that connection piece. And I think that's where the real work occurs. And when we think back to the, again, what little I know of Gandhi, but he took that to an extreme of other and connectedness and serving of others in a way that I'll never accomplish in all likelihood in my life. But for me, that connection between soul and spirituality is the continuing struggle to think outside of myself, to connect with others, to try to do so in a way that is respectful and kind and equitable and compassionate. And in mediation, when I think about, how, if you want me to flow right on, that's my basic sort of summary of how I see those three connecting, right? Very basic. And in mediation, starting with the mediator, it is so much more than a transactional process, or it can be so much more than a transactional process. And the one thing that is constant in all of the mediations that I do is me. And it's also the variable that is most within my capacity to change. It's really the only variable is me, that I have complete, as it were, capacity to see growth and change and movement. And so when you come to the opportunity to mediate as the mediator, as we've talked about in some other conversations, for me, the first part is coming to terms with self, and what am I bringing kind of in the totality of me within my soul, and how that soul connects to the other participants. And those participants in the mediation are connected, right? Like, no matter how extreme the conflict is, they're connected. When I think about just in family cases, when we think about couples that have separating, divorcing, and they're in this very high level of conflict, if you look at their life overall and you talk to them about their life, there's the largest part of their psychological energy when they're in really extremely high conflict. The largest part of their psychological energy, the biggest number of minutes of their day, the largest piece of their financial resources is often directed at this conflict. So when someone says, I'm not connected to that person anymore, I don't want to be connected to that person anymore, I don't love them anymore, all of these things, kind of, what are you talking about? But yet that person you're most connected to, but unfortunately in a negative way, seems to be that person. And everything is flowing there. And so they come into mediation highly connected, just in a potentially destructive and painful way. And so they're connected to each other. And when I come in as the mediator, I'm connected to them. I'm connected to them from the time somebody reaches out to me and says, will you be our mediator? Because here in Central Florida, as you and I've talked about before, we have the luxury of a lot of mediators and an active mediation community. And so lawyers by and large get to think about, and they do think about, who is that mediator? Who is that mediator going to be in connection with these people that we are working with? What do they bring that might be important for this family, right? So we've got 6 mediators we just chatted about as 2 lawyers that we all have the skill, and they come to mind when we think about this particular family, maybe for other practical reasons, cost or geographic location or other things. But out of a pool of 25 great mediators, we've got 6, and now we think about who is that mediator going to be in connection to these people, and how are we increasing the likelihood that that mediator is going to bring a self that allows our clients to experience this mediation as a place where they can settle, where they can experience emotion, where they can gather their thoughts, where they can feel acceptance, and they can talk about topics that maybe they wouldn't be able to talk about elsewhere. But in the presence of this mediator, we think they may be able to have those conversations. So in that mediation, the first piece is me, and what am I bringing to this mediation, and how am I, what am I doing in my own life to prepare myself on this level of these levels of heart, soul, and spirituality. And I know for some people that may mean meditation, it may mean their spiritual practices and how they put themselves in or religious practices and how they put themselves in a place of, that's what I'm looking for, sort of connection with God, and letting themselves sort of be a vessel for the folks in that conflict. You know, for other people, it's more of how they get sort of themselves right with themselves for the day, and push everything else out. For some people, it's connection of all of those things. So for me, over time, I definitely have less of a focus on, you'll be happy to hear this, less of a focus on the training piece, although that's still important to me, or I wouldn't listen to so many of your shows, right? Because I still want information, I want input, I want education. Training is a little bit more skill building, but nonetheless, that piece is less important to me over time. And more important to me is, how am I heading into this mediation today? How centered am I? How able am I to push out what's going on in my own life for today, and be fully present? Because mediation participants, I strongly believe, they deserve that from us. And it's not about whether they're paying or not paying, how much they're paying, whether your role is as a professional or a community leader, whatever structure you're in. If you're choosing to be the person facilitating that conversation, whether it has the mediator label on it or not, I think you owe a duty to the participants to be absolutely fully present and in your best place. And if you can't be, then the practical realities are that maybe on that day you say, I can't be the facilitator this day because I'm not able to bring that self that I know that these participants deserve and that they need for this particular day. So we talked on Saturday a little bit about, or I shared with you this idea that, you know, because we were talking about golf and the intricacies of just the golf swing. We didn't get to the rest of the game, you know, just your club swing, right? Which is different than your putter movement and whatever else. But so the intricacies and how some days it seems like all the conditions are the same and yet the outcome is different. And so, and I still am really working on that as a mediator, trying to understand what was different today. that maybe didn't feel as successful. And success isn't always that there was a resolution, because I think we can get resolution in formal mediation. So it got done, but it doesn't feel like it got done. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. And other times we don't get a successful outcome of the legal issues in a formal mediation, but movement was made. And conversations were had in a different way than these participants were ever able to have them before. And however they brought their conflict, the mediator was able to provide a space, a container, different maybe than a single participant or both participants that have ever experienced. And that can feel, at least for me, very successful at the conclusion of that day. So that's some about the mediator piece, and how the heart, soul, and spirituality relates to the mediator piece.
But look, I think from the mediator piece also, when you said that, look, when I come in, Teresa is coming in as a mediator, and that would remain the same. I'm saying there also we'll have to look at it from the perspective that Teresa herself is evolving. So now, today, what she is, she's not going to be that. Maybe this moment, every moment you're changing. So now, where does that change happen? Because is it the same heart that is there every day? Is that the same heart she's bringing in? It's the same soul she's bringing in? So is it that spirituality which is changing her every moment to moment? And when she comes in, so that change also, because of course mind definitely is processing a lot of things. So but I'm, of course, we are only looking at the heart, soul, spirituality aspect. So the Teresa that comes in the next day with another mediation, so what has really changed for her, and what she's bringing in as herself at that point of time, and what is the self?
So I definitely see it as an evolution and of self, and hope that, of course, a moment by moment, right? Every moment we're gathering new experiences. And so it makes sense to me that self in this moment is different than the one a few moments ago. I don't know that I assimilate all of that, right? That my brain and my soul keeps up that quickly. So conceptually, I agree with you, but I don't know that I keep up that quickly. But I definitely see an evolution of person. I see an evolution of family member, an evolution as a female, an evolution as a parent, an evolution as a daughter, an evolution as a professional, an evolution in all the different categories of professional. I think I'm more deliberate now than I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and on back we could go. I definitely, if we put a bigger gap, I definitely think I'm more deliberate in both understanding and guiding that evolution than I was when I was younger.
Yeah.
And how I guide that evolution, to the extent I'm in control of it, right? That's a whole nother conversation, maybe philosophically and spiritually, how much I'm guiding it. But for me, that means being connected with something outside of myself. And for my upbringing that I still connect with is embedded in a Christian faith. And so there definitely are those influences that are still relevant to me as a person. And there's an evolution in my connection to that and my thinking about that over time. And so that's part of it. Part of my evolution for me is coming to a recognition and realization that physical movement is imperative for me, and connection with nature is imperative for me, to put me in a space within my mind and my heart and my soul that I'm open to learning, and that I'm more open to connecting.
Exactly. Everyone doesn't go through that. I mean, that's why we should not just take it for granted that moment to moment if someone is evolving. So that is also an important part.
And then the other very deliberate part for me is I have been deliberate in my, what I'm going to call my career, my professionalism. Where am I now? What have I learned? Where are those areas that I clearly need to learn more? And then does that mean more skills? Does that mean learning different perspectives? Does that mean I need to learn something about myself internally? Is it about my connection to the people closest to me? Because I'm skipping over that and connecting with people outside of me that are never going to know me in the same way as the people close to me. So sometimes that's easier, right? I'll grow over there, but not here. And sometimes it's sort of the other way around, right? I'm focused on growing here close, but then I'm not paying enough attention to how I'm serving my clients in a way that's different than clocking the hours and, clocking the billable hours and lawyer language. So it's all of those pieces for me currently in my life. As I said, physical movement, connecting with the outdoors and with nature. It includes a yoga practice, but that's not the focus. And it includes as much connecting through written word or videos or audios with how other people are thinking around the world, because that continually reminds me to pull out of this very easy, safe bubble that I exist in most of the time, right? It's not always easy, but comparatively. And so that's a part of where I'm trying to direct the opportunity for growth, right? Maybe I'm not directing the growth, but trying to create opportunities for myself and directing growth. I'm going to share something with you, because this aversion you have to the word training, maybe because of part of my professional role that I feel so passionate about in teaching and what are called trainings or workshops, is thinking, because I don't know, maybe it was Lisa that said, well, Vikram thinks that training is like for dogs, or anyway, so you confirm that. So, when I think about this concept, because animals are important to me as well, I happen to have a couple cats right now, and talk about a growth experience in the concept of training and education, because it's just not, it just doesn't exist really. But with dogs, who I've had all of my life, there is that component. But I really always agreed with this concept of exercise, discipline, affection, right? Because exercise for dogs, and I'm talking family pets, I'm in no way an animal behaviorist and don't understand all the nuances of that, but I'm talking about pets. And the reason pets are important is I want to be connected to those pets. I feel connected to them. Whether they feel connected to me or it's just about the food, and I don't know, but I feel like I see signs that they seem connected to me by certain things. So the exercise piece is what settles them physiologically and puts them in a place of calm to be able to receive the learning that they need to receive. But it always should be with the overtones of compassion and kindness and love and connection. And so any training or education that we do is going to be best received when we do whatever we need to do to put ourselves in the place to be able to receive that knowledge, that opportunity, right? The opportunity is there. And what do we do to put ourselves in the place to be able to receive it? And I've sat as a professional, I've sat in lots of continuing education trainings while I checked my email, did something else, read a different, right? And that is a missed opportunity. And so now in my life, I think I do much better at recognizing I need to put myself in the mental place to be ready to receive I have the opportunity, but I still have to be ready to receive what I can receive from that training and learning. So I'm very deliberate about that. And I've been deliberate, as we talked about a little bit on Saturday, and sort of where do I want to go next in the opportunities? What am I enjoying in my life now professionally? And where do I want to go next to enjoy the work that I do? And where am I being challenged and not being challenged? So we talked about that I've been certified as a mediator in Florida, because that's how we do it here, since the 90s, since the 1990s. But I didn't do a lot of mediation. I did things that are similar, but I didn't do a lot of mediation for a number of years. And then I wanted to do more mediation. And then for me, it was that evolution of saying, you don't just say, I want to do more mediation. If you really want to do it well, that serves your clients. And so then it becomes more of a journey to say, what do I need to do as the mediator to be prepared to be there in that mediation space and serve those clients? And it includes, for me, training and education, but it really is a lot more than that.
Well, and I need to, of course, look, I tell you, whenever I talk about this training part of it, is because training, you put skills in someone. And I'm saying that the skill is there. For me, I mean, that's the way I look at mediators, that the skill is there. That skill needs to maybe be developed. People may or may not need to hone the skill. So you go into that direction of skill development. But when we say that we can train you to be a mediator, or we can make you a mediator, I feel you're demeaning mediators by themselves, because you don't make them in 40-hour factories or in these kind of trainings, as so-called trainings. There is a lot more that goes into those people, and there is something that maybe if you don't understand it and can't put words to it, don't put it down in this manner that we can make you that, because there is lots more.
So here's the thing. Every mediation training should include what you just said. Now, I'm not currently providing, I've participated previously as a provider in the 40-hour mediation training as a subject specialist or other roles, but I've been doing the collaborative practice training now for over a decade. And we talk about what you just said in that training, because we want people to leave with the recognition and understanding that they're here getting knowledge and learning some skills, but they may not be the best fit for that particular work. And if they believe that they are, or they see some sort of nuggets of that, mediator or collaborative mindset, I'm going to broaden it a little bit, and they want to develop that, it's so much more than going to the next 40-hour training or the next 2-day workshop. So I think that concept that you're talking about has a place to be discussed in those mediation trainings. And I tell you how it does happen. I know this happens in mediator training because I talk to a lot of mediators who have been through the training, but are choosing not to be mediators. And I also know from these collaborative workshops that sometimes someone leaves that training and says, I'm not sure that this role, that I'm best suited for this role, but here's what I know. I now learned some parts and pieces that I'm going to take into the other work that I do. It's going to make me a better lawyer, a better mental health professional. And the other thing that happens is they say, I heard about mediation. I heard about collaborative. I didn't have any real clue, really, of what that meant. I now have a deeper understanding. And so I will send people to collaborative lawyers, or I will send people to mediators, and I will be more mindful of what I'm really looking for in a mediator to meet the particular needs of this client. So I don't think that that this concept of the mediator mindset and this concept of education and training are mutually exclusive. The other thing that when you talk about some wonderful ideas you have of bringing back leaders who naturally have that mediator mindset and training from young school age up. Those are important ideas and wonderful initiatives, but that's going to take some time for those, for you to be successful in making sure the world is following those ideas you have. And so when I think about right now, well, so then what do we do with the people who are right now in their conflict and don't have 2 decades to wait? We need to use what we have available, because otherwise they stay simply at their place in conflict, or they use the method that is available to them in many places, which is the litigation system. And so I want to make sure that we're remembering that we can use those resources that we have available. And if conceptually we see every experience as an opportunity for growth and evolution, then there's the opportunity for each nugget in every mediation, every person that's in that process, to take something back to their work, to their family, to their parenting. And that sort of granular level is as important as these broader sort of goals and opportunities. And in Ken's the opening to the keynote to this particular symposium, I think is where he talked about, there was a point in his conversation with you where, and I don't know what led to this part exactly, but he talked it on the more practical level. I think we were talking, you guys were talking about even the schoolyard struggle. And he talked on the more practical level of, the first task is to separate this, right? And you've ended the conflict. That's the physical part. And then he sort of went through the different layers of what can happen in resolution of conflict or in mediation. And he pointed out, I think very importantly, that not every conflict, change, opportunity, not every mediation is going to achieve all of those. But any level that you achieve is important and has an opportunity maybe to stop pain, to stop further escalation of conflict. I mean, obviously we want to go through as many levels as possible, because he pointed out, when you don't, and then he referred to a marriage, right? When you don't, then that conflict is going to erupt again. In any relationship that's ongoing, it's going to erupt again. And arguably, when you leave that conflict in that person, even if it's not erupting with the person they're in conflict with, it's going to have, there's going to be little sparks maybe in other relationships and other connections, back to that spiritual piece, other connections that person is existing within, when we don't get through kind of all of the layers of resolving each conflict. But the reality is it may not happen in every single mediation, for sure. It certainly doesn't in all of mine.
But Teresa, we cannot lose sight of the heart, soul, and spirituality. So you are still, because you said you have a time constraint. So yes. I have to get you there, because this part, okay. This topic, the other, because this part, I'm telling you, there is so much that we'll have to do another in conversation, the beautiful mind. We'll have to do part 2 there. But this part is interesting. And no, what you're saying, yes. We need to discuss that.
Right. So move me along.
Yes. Yeah. So now, but look, one is, of course, from the mediator's perspective, yes. You brought that in.
Yes.
From the dispute perspective, if you want to talk about that, then we can move to the parties and the process.
So the dispute piece, so my brain is popping to all these different connected pieces that I would like to bring together that I'm probably not going to do very well. So maybe by way of example, now which example is going to pick? So most of the disputes that I work in at this point are disputes related to families. Most of them, not all of them, are disputes related to the divorce transition, where there are still minor children. Not all of them, but this is just the easiest context for me to put it into. And some of those disputes include components related to for instance, division of property, right? Houses down to, washers and dryers. And that's an example maybe where easily we could say, that's really just about the things. It's just about the things. It's a right. So I worked with a family one time where there were all these layers of, all of these layers of betrayal, where the wife had been together a very long time. They were in their 60s, been married 40 something years. And she remained a bit surprised that they were even getting divorced. She believed, which turned out to be accurate, that he had become involved with someone else. She found out a happy surprise in the process that they were actually worth millions of dollars. This was a woman in her 60s that was still here in Florida in the 90-something degree heat, caring for their lawn outdoors, on her own. He wouldn't do it. He worked very hard in his profession as a physician, but he didn't do any of the keeping around the house. And, her age and our heat, she was struggling, but it had to be done. Never knowing that they really had plenty of funds to be able to get assistance with something like that. And there were all these levels of betrayal. And so when we're going through dividing things and dividing monies, and in reality, she's learning new, because it turned out he had like rooms full of, she knew that there were things that he had put in the house and they locked doors and they didn't go into those rooms. He had been gathering artwork and, paintings and pottery and all of these things that he believed were worth something. But he didn't want her seeing them or touching them, right? Another level of betrayal. So as we're moving through this, I mean, the dispute that we're solving is a legal dispute around the division of no minor children. It was around the division of assets and liabilities, and it was around the division of stuff. And fairly, straightforward in this particular family on the surface of it. Not a lot of complexity from a financial perspective or a legal perspective. And yet this situation took us a very, very long time to help these two resolve. Because the dispute for her was about betrayal. And her soul was deeply impacted by this sense of being betrayed across all of these different ways that one can feel betrayed as a spouse and as a person. And until we could work through, because that's what she brought to the conflict. And we worked as a team patiently over the course of about 13 months in a series of meetings where I was facilitator, and we had 2 lawyers and we had a financial professional. And we worked in all kinds of different ways to help work through the betrayal piece. What he was bringing that was beyond just dividing things up, and I won't get into the personal details. I do always, the odds of anybody ever knowing who this family, but I'm protective of that. He was dealing with a tremendous amount of shame and a lot of secrets. And that's where his soul was. And so he actually wanted this done as quickly as possible because he didn't want to deal with the secrets that he had been keeping, and he didn't want to deal with the shame. She needed time and an opportunity to deal on all level with betrayal. And so ultimately, he gave way within his soul, I believe, due to the core connection he had with her and the opportunity that he took to connect with the team. So he stopped protecting his secrets, and we worked through the betrayal pieces. They got divorced. This is going to sound like a fairy tale ending, but I'm going to tell it anyway. They got their divorce. She informed the team that she had purchased a home, because remember, she discovered they had all of these assets that they split. And her greatest joy was buying new appliances, which she'd never had in her life. And her second greatest joy was that she had someone to help with the yard work. She had a tiny yard and she was still doing a lot of the gardening, but she had someone to help with the other part. The other part is this, the sad part, kind of bittersweet. He ended up with cancer about a year and a half later. And we got another email from her as a team, and he lived the last 3 weeks of his life in her home. And I do think that's because we didn't just stay at the level of the dispute being transactional. It was about their heart, their soul, and their spirituality in the sense of connection and finding a place of being able to value one another and end their marriage with a level of dignity that allowed them to come back together in a really compassionate way. That doesn't always happen, but that to me is an example of that concept of heart, soul, and spirituality in the dispute itself.
I think that's a very relevant example, and I think this is what I'm trying to bring out. These are the things that we need to bring out. Yeah, because those are important aspects to connect with that, and to be able to create an atmosphere to be able to for them to connect also. That's of course where you came in. So these are important. Yep.
So the heart, soul, and spirituality piece for the participants, I think, has come out in little pieces in what we've already talked about, including that example. But I think that as professionals, when we're working with someone who's going to be a participant in mediation, it is having the opportunity to build relationship with them, build connection with them, and see if they're open to preparing for mediation in a way that's a little different than just reviewing a financial spreadsheet. And not all participants are open to that, but to not assume that participants aren't open to that, and to give them an opportunity for the kind of preparation that helps them be ready, for the mediation experience. And so when I can tell when I start a mediation what kind of prep has been done with that client, and what kind of prep that client has done themselves. Some people, probably back to your mediator mindset, right? They're not coming in as mediators, but they more intuitively within their soul, it comes easier for them to know. They know it here, and then they have to work through it in experience, that they must get back to a place in relationship with the person that they're divorcing from, where these concepts can flow more easily of passion, of compassion and regard and valuing, where they can talk about forgiveness, right? And as Ken talked about, beyond forgiveness on those levels, I think being able to reopen one's heart isn't just going ahead in your marital state, but if you're co-parenting with one another over the course of time, there is a reopening of one's heart that comes into play.
Because I think, of course, you're going to be cutting off at, of course, whatever, you want to stick to the time. But I'm just thinking that I don't know whether you saw Luis Ore. We had a discussion. We were trying to put together a kind of analogy there. the router and the and connecting to the router and the internet and creating something around that. So he put up a very interesting kind of a summary in his post. Have a look at it. He's actually put it all down.
I actually saw that that he put out, and just sharing two things. It's just the different ways we receive information, the different types of learners that we are. I had a little bit of difficulty sort of following it because it doesn't fit for how I approach, but I found it so interesting because, in all candor, I'm not watching all 40 something in this symposium. Maybe eventually I'll get to them, but it's hard. I don't know how you do it, but I do want to, and as I said, I've started with some people I've already heard before. Oh, I'd like to hear them again, but right. So I am deliberately. And so when I saw that, I sort of tagged that as someone I wanted to listen to because I wanted to know what you all talked about. So I actually did listen to your entire conversation with him, and I really enjoyed it, actually. And I had some takeaways. If I end up getting to participate on Friday, I have some takeaways from that. So for me, even though I usually love a visual representation, it didn't resonate, but definitely listening to the conversation was worthwhile for me, and I really enjoyed. And I had never heard him before, so
you must.
That's a good one for folks to listen to.
What you need to do is, of course, watch his other in conversation, the Beautiful Mind, and the lecture series and all, and the symposium. Of course, he talks about his experience largely in that about his work with the communities who are affected by mining projects. So that's his major work in Peru, has been. So he talks about that, but that's also interesting work, and we need to, of course, that needs to develop all over the world. But what I found interesting is at least he put out a summary and his charts and everything. I just like that part. I mean, he's just really thought about something and he's put it out there. So that was really what I liked about it. So someone actually, whatever thoughts came to him there, it connected, something connected.
Right.
We'll elaborate on it. I mean, these were just thoughts out there. We'll all sit together. We're sitting on Friday. We'll create some other things out of it. But the idea is someone at least thought about something. I like that. So someone put something out.
And I think for some people, it will be, it will be their language, right? It'll speak to their language, their way of processing.
Yeah. And we'll refine it. We'll refine that. We'll sit with Louis and we'll refine it.
So what in our last few minutes, what have I not?
Teresa, there is so much more, of course, there is so much more I'm sure you'll bring into it. Look, in terms of the process, that connection between people, which we just say that, but what goes into that? The intuition, you're saying intuition. Now, what goes into intuition? Is it something which has more to do it than more to, I don't know what all comes as part of that. So these are things which you're just putting out and just to discuss, and we'll take it from there as we go along. So anything else? Yeah.
Anything else about process? So two things. This won't be a complete, but with the time we have left, so we can, I can transition to my next. Part of how I prepare for process is the more concrete pieces of how do I set up the atmosphere from the time I'm asked to be the mediator, in terms of how I communicate with the lawyers, which is the type of mediation I'm doing, and the participants, how my staff communicates with them, the welcoming environment that I want to create it before they even come to the mediation space. A big part, and this is a small thing and it's nothing unique, I don't think that other people aren't doing, but the recognition that I'm doing all of this online mediation, live online mediation, using Zoom almost exclusively. And I have been for a couple of years, and many people are working in that way. But there are people I mediate with that have never used Zoom before. They don't use FaceTime. If they work, they're certainly not working at a desk doing Zoom. And so they come in to this online mediation with an extra layer of anxiety and discomfort. And, imagine you're coming to an 8-hour mediation, dealing with oftentimes one of the most heart-wrenching transitions in your entire life, and you're using a platform that you feel completely uncomfortable with. And for some people, discomfort becomes a sense of embarrassment. Everybody, so you hear it, everybody on this Zoom is a professional but me, or everybody on this Zoom deals with Zoom all the time, and I'm scared the whole time I'm going to hit the wrong button, or I'm going to be in the wrong room because I don't understand that. And so, recognizing, inquiring to find out where people are, what's their experience with mediation, giving them some voice to share some of their concerns about the process and how we're going to go about the process. And are there some ways we can shift process? Right? Maybe some ideas I have about how I like to go about it shifts in the first 30 minutes of that mediation, because my ideas about how I'm going to approach it are very self-focused. They may have been things that have worked previously, but they're about me and where I come from and my collection of experiences with other participants up to that moment. But these participants, this exact group of us, and each individual is different. And so process-wise, having the ability to assess some of that from the moment we begin, sometimes you get that information before, and then to be able to make process adjustments that are going to work for that particular person, or if the process adjustments are going to work for one person but are completely contrary to the process adjustments that work for someone else on an emotional or cognitive level, then how do we recognize that? How do we reconcile those differences from the first moments of mediation to make sure that process is going to better fit what these people are bringing as people? It's not about the conflict at that point. It's about how they are approaching this opportunity as people. So we're out of time for me to get to my next conversation, but I really appreciate the opportunity to share a few thoughts.
And that's not fair, because definitely 1 hour was not enough for your discussion. So we'll take it up on Friday. So whatever else.
Friday, I hope to be there. I'm supposed to have a family member from out of town who's now looking at potentially shifting their trip. And so I will choose family first if this family member is allowed to come. But if not, I'll make an effort to be there, because I don't have any clients scheduled, because I thought I was
very good. Very good. So
right.
Whatever time you can spend, whatever time you can take out. So please. So thanks a lot, Teresa.
Thank you, Vikram. I appreciate it.
And we'll see you then. See you on Friday.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.